The days of excess staffing, workplace injuries, and unnecessary overtime costs to get important work standards accomplished may be coming to an end. Want to know how to cut those kinds of costs quickly and easily? Because reliable employees make it to work when they're supposed to, unnecessary overtime costs can be avoided. Because employees with a rock-solid work ethic who don't use drugs usually get significantly more work accomplished than others and are less likely to cause injury to themselves or others. Clients tell us it makes sense to screen job applicants and measure the reliability, work ethic, and attitudes towards substance abuse before they hire them. More companies are turning to pre-employment tests that measure things like work ethic, reliability, and attitudes towards substance abuse to solve those kinds of problems in advance because it's far cheaper and much less frustrating than trial and error. The Insure survey is just one example of many popular pre-employment tests I'm familiar with that maximize the probability of you hiring folks who realize that a job is a privilege and are willing to exchange an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Here's how it works. It measures integrity, attitudes towards substance abuse, reliability, and work ethic on a scale from 1 to 9. The higher the score, the better. It even has a built-in distortion score, commonly referred to as the lie scale, that alerts you if applicants are trying to fake good and give answers they think you want to hear instead of the truth. Higher scores on the distortion score indicate a greater degree of candor from applicants who take this pre-employment test. If you want to know how to hire reliable, drug-free employees with a solid work ethic, then let's focus on those portions of the sample report and explore the ways you can use that information to solve related problems in advance. When this psychometric test was validated by the industrial psychologist who created it, it was given to 2 populations. One was a group of convicted felons on parole, so they had no incentive to try and impress anyone by giving answers they thought would be more desirable. And a group of top performers. The ages, races, and sexes of the participants were varied and analyzed to make sure that the employment test results were not discriminatory and in full compliance with the EEOC's 80% rule. The majority of the felons who took this pre-employment test scored 4 or less on each of the scales for substance abuse, reliability, and work ethic. The majority of top performers scored 5 or better. This psychometric test also identifies as red flags by category the statements that applicants make which affect their scores in a negative way. Let's look at a sample report for Pete Poor. He scored a 6 on the reliability scale, which is a decent score. Yet, the employment assessment extracted a statement that he made that you would be wise to explore further. Notice how Pete Poor indicated here that he felt like working through his lunch break means he can go home early. To conduct a more meaningful interview in less time, it's easy. All you do is focus on the most concerning things the applicant said and ask them to explain why they feel that way. If an applicant responds with an answer like, well, if my boss can't write up a work schedule correctly and I have to work through my lunch to make up for it, then you're darn right I'm going home early. That's why the boss gets the big bucks. Well, that's one thing. Conversely, if an applicant says something like, oh, it's a policy where I work now that if we work through our lunch break, we're allowed to go home early, then that's another. It's a mistake to judge an applicant by their scores alone without giving them the ability to elaborate. One last thing. I mentioned this in another free video on a similar topic, but it's worth repeating here. there's another way to use employment tests like this that a few people don't think of. What if the job you're offering is, well, for lack of a better term, undesirable? It's hard, hot, dirty, doesn't pay much, and you have a hard time filling it with hard-working, reliable, and drug-free employees. Well, you could make sure that given the choice, your high-risk employees aren't working together with other high-risk employees. On a night shift, given little or no close supervision, your risk can be dramatically reduced by placing those high-risk candidates in low-risk positions with strict supervision. Let's face it, the people you hire either solve business problems or create more of them. Psychometric tests like this can help you identify high-risk and high-reward individuals and solve business problems before they occur for less than you'd normally spend on an hour or two's worth of wages.